Ere Nessus yet had reached the other bank, we entered on a forest, where no track of steps had worn away. Not verdant there the foliage, but of dusky hue, not light the boughs in tapering, but with nares deformed and matted thick, fruits there were none, but thorns instead, with venom filled. Less sharp than these, less intricate the breaks, wherein abide those animals, that hate the cultured fields, betwixt Corneto and Cecina's stream. Here the brood harpies make their nest, the same who from the Strophades the Trojan band drove with dire boding of their future woe. Broad are their pennons, of the human form their neck and countenance, armed with talons keen the feet, and the huge belly fledged with wings these sit and wail on the drear mystic wood. The kind instructor in these words began, ere farther thou proceed, know thou art now a second round, and shalt be, till thou come upon the horrid sand, look therefore well around thee, and such things thou shalt behold, as would my speech discredit. On all sides I heard sad plainings breathe, and none could see from whom they might have issued. In a maze fast bound I stood. He, as it seemed, believed, that I had thought so many voices came from some amid those thickets close concealed, and thus his speech resoned, if thou lop off a single twig from one of those ill plants, the thought thou hast conceived shall vanish quite. Thereat a little stretching forth my hand, from a great wilding gathered I a branch, and straight the trunk exclaimed, Why pluck'st thou me? Then as the dark blood trickled down its side, these words it added, Wherefore tear'st me thus? Is there no touch of mercy in thy breast? Men once were we, that now are rooted here. Thy hand might well have sparred us, had we been the souls of serpents? As a brand yet green, that burning at one end from the other sends a groaning sound, and hisses with the wind that forces out its way, so burst at once, forth from the broken splinter words and blood. I, letting fall the bough, remained as one assailed by terror, and the sage replied, If he, O injured spirit, could have believed what he hath seen but in my verse described, he never against thee had stretched his hand. But I, because the thing surpassed belief, prompted him to this deed, which even now myself I rue. But tell me, who thou wast, that, for this wrong to do thee some amends, in the upper world, for thither to return is granted him, thy fame he may revive. That pleasant word of thine, the trunk replied, hath so inveigled me, that I from speech cannot refrain, wherein if I indulge a little longer, in the snare detained, count it not grievous. I it was, who held both keys to Frederick's heart, and turned the wards, opening and shutting, with a skill so sweet, that besides me, into his inmost breast scarce any other could admittance find. The faith I bore to my high charge was such, it cost me the lifeblood that warmed my veins. The harlot, who ne'er turned her gloating eyes from Caesar's household, common vice, and pest of courts, gainst me inflamed the minds of all, and to Augustus they so spread the flame, that my glad honors chined to bitter woes. My soul, disdainful and disgusted, sought refuge in death from scorn, and I became, just as I was, unjust toward myself. By the new roots, which fix this stem, I swear, that never faith I broke to my liege lord, who merited such honor, and of you, if any to the world indeed return, clear he from wrong my memory, that lies yet prostrate under envy's cruel blow. First somewhat pausing, till the mournful words were ended, then to me the bard began, Lose not the time, but speaking of him ask, if more thou wish to learn. Whence I replied, Question thou him again of whatsoever will, as thou think'st, content me, for no power have I to ask, such pity is at my heart. He thus resumed, So may he do for thee freely what thou entreatest, as thou yet be pleased, imprisoned spirit. To declare, how in these gnarled joints the soul is tied, and whether any ever from such frame be loosened, if thou canst, that also tell. Thereat the trunk breathed hard, and the wind soon chimed into sounds articulate like these. Briefly ye shall be answered. When departs the fierce soul from the body, by itself thence torn asunder, to the seventh gulf by Minos doomed, into the wood it falls, no place assigned, but wheresoever chance hurls it, there sprouting, as a grain of spelt, it rises to a sapling, growing thence a savage plant. The harpies, on its leaves then feeding, cause both pain and for the pain a vent to grief. We, as the rest, shall come for our own spoils, yet not so that with them we may again be clad, for what a man takes from himself it is not just he have. Here we perforce shall drag them, and throughout the dismal blade our bodies shall be hung, each on the wild thorn of his wretched shade. Attentive yet to listen to the trunk we stood, expecting farther speech, when us a noise surpriest, as when a man perceives the wild boar in the hunt approach his place of station watch, who of the beasts and boughs loud rustling round him hears. And lo! There came two naked, torn with briars, in headlong flight, that they before them broke each fan oth wood. Haste now, the foremost cried, now haste thee death. The other, as seemed, impatient of delay exclaiming, Lano! Not so bent for speed thy sinews, in the lists of Topo's field. And then, for that perchance no longer breath suffocked him, of himself and of a bush one group he made. Behind them was the wood full of black female mastiffs, gaunt and fleet, as greyhounds that have newly slipped the leash. On him, who squatted down, they stuck their fangs, and having rent him piecemeal bore away the tortured limbs. My guide then seized my hand, and led me to the thicket, which in vain mourned through its bleeding wounds, O Giacomo of Sant' Andrea! What avails it thee, it cried, that of me thou hast made thy screen? For thy ill life what blame on me recoils? When o'er it he had paused, my master spake, Say who wast thou, that at so many points breathed out with blood thy lamentable speech? He answered, O, ye spirits, arrived in time to spy the shameful havoc, that from me my leaves hath severed thus, gather them up, and at the foot of their sad parent tree carefully lay them. In that city I dwelt, who for the Baptist her first patron shined, whence he for this shall cease not with his art to work her woe, and if there still remained not on Arno's passage some faint glimpse of him, those citizens, who reared once more her walls upon the ashes left by Attila, had labored without profit of their toil. I slung the fatal news from my own roof.